Welcome back, everyone, to another one-on-one with JerryVHall. Today's conversation is with Twitter, YouTube influencer, CryptoFinally. We sit down, we have a conversation. We're going to talk about diversity. We're going to talk about inclusion. We're going to talk about what that OCC PDF doc could mean to who and how. Interesting young lady, full of energy. I love that she's unapologetic. And she's operating in a space much different than mine. I'm coming from it, well, from the lens of an investor, and she's coming from it as a form of community. And I think it takes all kinds to make this thing happen. I'm really grateful for all the work that Rachel does. She's going to attract a lot of people to this space. And with that, let them get educated about this incredible innovation that is digital assets, cryptocurrencies, and blockchain technology. That conversation and a whole lot more coming up right after this.
Finance. Now it's new and improved. Fortified with the ingredients that investors love. On today's episode, easy access to crypto exchanges.
Rachel, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to chat with me today. How are things going where you are?
I am good. It has been super hot out, and anyone who's been sort of keeping track of me knows that I just recently got a second air conditioner, which is all the rave outside of Bitcoin breaking 11K.
Now that is huge. I too am an avid crypto enthusiast / investor, and it is definitely a good time to be involved in crypto. Now, one of the things, and I think this is really big news for the entire crypto community, and that is a letter that was put out by the OCC in response to a bank's asking for clarity around certain custody issues. And they put out this really incredible PDF document outlining what they believe already fits within their existing regulations that encompass custody of digital assets for the cryptocurrency world. I would love to get your spin on that because I know there's two sides to every coin.
Yeah, honestly, so I'm of the mind that I'm of the two sides when it comes to the OCC approval of banks custodying crypto. So in my mind, yes, it does create a barrier to what our goal is with Bitcoin, right? You're actually asking for us to maintain trust within a trustless system. It's just the same, not your keys, not your coins, another custody agreement, another Coinbase. You don't want to get error code 502 by the banks. On the other side of that coin, however, I do think that it solves a lot of problems when it comes to, say, big whales, big billionaires who want to get involved in the space but aren't comfortable holding onto their own bags, inheritance, passing crypto down as a long-term investment to your children and grandchildren. Who's to say that any custodial wallet will still be in business like 50 years from now? There's no knowledge to that, and it might be too difficult to pass down seed phrase. So it does open up possibilities for situations like that, as well as people like who truly just want to custody. And the fact of the matter is Bitcoin is supposed to be your own bank and be freedom of centralization and freedom of centralized entities such as banks. However, not everybody wants to be their own bank. And that's just the fact of the matter. So if you're looking at global adoption and really getting everyone involved, we do need to have opportunities on all sides of this. That's my opinion.
No, I agree with you 100%. I think this opens the door for those that felt that self-custody wasn't necessarily their bag, something they felt comfortable with. And I'm sure that volume of dollars in has some impact on that. I think I'm pretty comfortable with what I have put into the market, but it might be a completely different story if it was $2 million of my own money. You know what I mean? So I could see a case for both sides. And so what's interesting about this conversation is that kind of two worlds are coming together here. I've been a real altcoin enthusiast my 2.5 years in this space. And you've been a very, very, very vocal advocate for Bitcoin. And I totally get that. And I totally respect that. Share with me your journey into crypto and what led you into like using your voice, because I've seen your presentations. You've done excellent presentations you're creative, and you've got really cool little TikTok stuff in your music videos on your channel. It's a real eclectic mix. So, you know, walk me and my viewers who may not be that familiar with you through that process.
Yeah, so when I first got involved in cryptocurrency, I actually came from a mainstream production background. I worked for the Blue Man Group for a long time, as well as places like Shakespeare in the Park, Broadway, The Lion King, Wicked, as well as commercial productions, HPE, Weight Watchers, stuff like that. So I had a big background in commercial production, theatrical production, and I had friends from LA who also did commercial work who were visiting me out in New York. So happened to invite me to the consensus after parties. And that was not my first introduction to cryptocurrency. I'd heard about it in the past, but thought that it was just too difficult for me to get involved in. But it was the first time that I actually got to meet members of the community and see, hey, I actually can get involved in this. There was a barrier of understanding for me, and seeing the drive and passion of the people in the community really amped me up to get involved.
I love it. You know, one of the blessings of having this particular channel that I've had is that I've been fortunate enough to get folks from, you know, the legacy financial, equities, bonds, gold world on and discuss, you know, investment strategies and valuation models and these type of things, but also developers in the crypto space, as well as what I would consider influencers like yourself. And it's a real eclectic mix. Now, the other day, I just had the good fortune of having Dave Meadows on. He's an actor from Hollywood, and another producer named Eric Seidman, who's been on the show. And their perspective, you know, coming from kind of an entertainment lens, and how they frame, well, how they speak and how they talk and interact. And there's something really magnetic about that. I think it's the entertainer gene inside of you and all these different people, right? That bring this kind of compelling, draw you in kind of energy. Tell me how you've taken that energy and then got up on stage and actually went through a technical breakdown of not only the market element, but the technical elements of this new innovative technology, Bitcoin. What's that like? I mean, because obviously you're not a coder, and you don't come from a traditional trading background. You're not a finance major.
That's not, yes, it's, I typically don't do, I mean, I don't, in my mind, view them as technical breakdowns, more as like analytical breakdowns. That would be sort of the way that I view the space. So I talk about different sides of cryptocurrency than I think people are used to talking about, right? So that would be like the sociological point of view, which is saying like, hey, our behavior, our social spaces, the perception, the portrayal of cryptocurrency and the community is going to play into adoption. And what are the ways that we can tackle sort of these perceptions and portrayals in order to grow into a greater adoptive state. So talking about stuff like that comes a little more naturally to me. Usually I can talk about things if I really believe in them, right? So you'll see if you actually watch my talks, if I'm in something that drones on and off, or that like isn't really something that I'm passionate about, you can see the difference in the way that I speak. So when I talk about social issues, when I talk about the perceptions and portrayals, when I talk about Bitcoin in the media, these are things that really, really interest me. And it gives me sort of like, you know, a soapbox to stand on, and something that I feel comfortable standing up in front of other people and saying, despite the fact that you're right, I am not a coder, I'm not a developer, and I'm not always going to be the person that can provide these solutions to the problems and the conversations that I'm having. However, I am a firm believer that having these conversations is important.
Oh, no doubt. I'll tell you, I came to this space knowing nothing about it. Matter of fact, I would say you could encapsulate my financial education or financial literacy in, okay, he could manage a checkbook and he could run a household budget. That was about the extent. And now I'm learning about modern monetary policy and in how interest rates and debt affect monetary, the volume of circulating currency and what debt brings to the table and what taking debt off the table means, and measuring that up against, you know, fixed supply assets like gold and Bitcoin and things of that nature. And it's been a fascinating couple-year ride for me. I'm sure that you have learned a ton about topics that you probably thought you would never dive into. You want to share a couple of those?
I mean, Bitcoin cryptocurrency at all, I don't know that there's anything more like, I think the question for me is a little bit obtuse. If you want to narrow it down, I might give you a better answer. But I think the fact that I'm talking about crypto, Bitcoin, blockchain, any of those things, is something that if you had asked me about 3 years ago, would I ever be discussing these things? I would tell you no, only 3 years ago, I would have been able to say like, no, I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it's not for people like me. Which is part of the reason that I continue to reiterate the message that I do, that anyone can get involved and there is no specific kind of person involved in cryptocurrency.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, one of the biggest selling points to me for cryptocurrency was understanding inflation and deflation, right? That the dollar, the way governments around the world use their sovereign currencies, continue to lose value over time. And just the concept of the fixed supply that is prevalent with, I'd say 95% of all these digital assets that are on the board, that's something, right? Because even if, let's say, Bitcoin doesn't appreciate in nominal value, it's not losing value just because the Fed decides to turn on the printing machine and flood us with more currency debasement. You know what I mean? There's an element to the purchasing power in these digital assets that's extremely attractive, especially if you've been somebody who's saved money in a bank account, like a savings account, and watched the purchasing power of your savings account just diminish, year after year after year after year. It's friggin' crazy. Yeah.
Absolutely. And even like a step out from that, like obviously it has a lot of solutions to the monetary policy, but it has a lot of solutions across the board. And what I find interesting about what you're saying right now is like the push to get you involved in Bitcoin is really what a lot of people in what we would consider a mainstream consumer culture don't really take knowledge of at all. People aren't thinking about the monetary policy. They're just thinking that their dollar works. So actually this moment, like with COVID, with the money printing, with the Federal Reserve going crazy, I think, what is it? $2.4 trillion have already been printed on COVID relief, something outrageous like that. That's bigger than the economy of all of Canada. Nuts. Stuff like that is happening, and it's creating a very clear picture to the mainstream common consumer, right? The mainstream common consumer, for the first time in a really long time, is hearing about the Federal Reserve printing more money than all of Canada uses at all. And that's scary. And I think that it provides like a tangible idea for everyday people to get involved in with Bitcoin, because truth is, like, people aren't thinking about the stuff you just said. People aren't thinking about the monetary policy and inflationary assets.
Right. No, good point. Good point. I didn't put a whole lot of thought to it until I got to this space. And I'll tell you, like I said, my financial literacy being in this space has just grown exponentially. Whereas before I could balance a checkbook and run the budget for the house, that was about it, like I was saying. And but there is something really incredible about like just even the person to person exchange of this kind of information. Like I have a 22-year-old son, and for the last couple of years we talk a lot, and when I talk to him, I'm talking to him about some of these principles, and it's interesting to see how he reacts, because he's obviously looking through the world through lenses that he developed through his teenage years and early adult life, right? Similar to mine, but my early adult life was in a completely different world than we have today. You know what I mean? And so he's getting to see it from this, he was raised in the digital world. He was raised in using, digital assets before there was such a thing as Bitcoin. Through his games, these online games that have their own in-game token economy type of things. Dad, can I get $20 for the game? And I'd give him the card. He put $20 on his account, and now he had a digital form of value that he could exchange with all his buddies in the game. Trade for this, buy this, do this. And it's kind of like, I think a lot of times we don't give credit to those gamers that help pave the way for this digital revolution, and the fact that it's these young millennials like yourself and my son and others that are really going to take it to the next level. And it's not a foreign concept for you guys, kind of like it is for my generation.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's true. You know, there have forever been like point systems and currency systems in gaming and websites and stuff like that. So it's not a far removed concept. You're totally correct from what we experienced, like even growing up. Tons of games with stuff like that. You buy points and then you can use the points as a currency system within the game. So yeah, no, I do agree with that. And so it might make it an easier learning curve for the younger generation, definitely. I mean, I can't this sound dumb and like ages me really young, but I can't like imagine not being able to perceive like you bought this electronic thing and now you can distribute the electronic thing and use it as you know, I can't imagine growing up in a world where I didn't know that, you know, like Neopets. Like do you know what Neopets is?
I actually don't. That kind of shows my age.
Well, Neopets puts me at like an old, I'm the elder millennial, right? So like younger kids and the Zoomers will have no idea what Neopets is, but basically it's a virtual world where you accumulate Neo points and you can use them. This is so dumb for people who know what it is. You can use the Neo points to feed your virtual pets and put them in hotels. You can use the Neo points to gamble. You can put the Neo points in your own Neopian bank and earn interest on them. So it really was its own like weird little financial structure within this game that I played, but it had full commerce, you know, it was completely prepared. You could use the Neo points for anything. So I guess in sort of intrinsically in my lifestyle and brand, I've seen stuff like that forever. So it makes sense to me. But again, you know, my mother told me, my mother's really old and this will age her even higher than you will prepare for. She was telling me about, you know, they used to just like their biggest technology was watching the Mickey Mouse show, and they used to have like a piece of plastic that they put on the screen and you draw on a marker on the piece of plastic to like say where Mickey Mouse would go. Like, and that's so far removed. That's my mom. So like the generations are
That's
going
me.
quick.
I
Yeah.
remember those days.
The Mickey Mouse. Well, then you're younger than you look, sir.
Well, I'm retired and down here in Costa Rica and just enjoying the, you know what, I'll tell you, it makes you, when you get interested and excited about something and dive into learning and engage elements of your brain to looking at issues, whether you frame it as a problem or not, it doesn't matter. If you're looking at an issue and you're looking at, okay, solution, weighing, you know, you've got to come up with ways to value these things. And it just incorporates elements of the brain that young people use all the time, because you're figuring out the world as you go. Now, I'm not saying I've got the world figured out, but I've done a lot of figuring out throughout my life, right? And so a lot of people my age tend to start winding down, you know what I mean? And just kind of get into their little groove and they get comfortable. I've dove headfirst into a space I knew nothing about, and it's just been this process of active learning that I think is kind of makes me, I feel younger than I did when I started. I can tell you that. Pretty soon my hair is going to start growing back. It's going to be incredible. Might even get brown like yours again.
Funny, I'm having the opposite effect where I am graying.
your crypto's turning you into an old hag. No, just kidding.
So old.
That won't happen.
I literally have been getting like pure white hairs anyway. I'm gonna dye it, but
Oh,
I have been. It's been horrible.
one of the things I like about you is that you are you, and it's kind of you're not ashamed of it. You know what I mean? And I love that, because I've seen you do stuff where it looks like you literally just rolled out of bed. You're not trying to put on some mask or some face and present yourself to be somebody other than you're not. And so I totally respect sincerity and being genuine. You know what I mean? So I think that's incredible. I would encourage you to continue to do that. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, because I find this really fascinating, I would imagine that you get a lot of newer folks into the space coming to you for, I don't want to say advice, but looking to you for answers. How's that? Would that be a fair assessment? Does that happen a lot for you?
I'm sure. I mean, yes. Yeah.
So you've become an influencer and somebody who knows something. Have you like, what have you learned about yourself through that process? Because you came here knowing nothing, or literally nothing, and now people are coming to you for answers. What
Well,
what have you
even
discovered
more
about
than just
yourself?
even more than just myself, I think it gives me a clearer picture on the space. You know, so I think that for the most part in the influencer circuit, we're in a bit of an echo chamber, right? I think that we're in a bit of an echo chamber when it comes to the percentage of people in the world who are knowledgeable on cryptocurrency to the percentage of people in the world who can actually give very eloquent answers, be it the developers, be it the miners or the coders. The question of what I come to and what I've learned about myself is my special power is creating accessible language. So I don't use unnecessary jargon. I don't say things that are too difficult for everyday users to understand. And I don't really take you on like long-winded adventures of trading and charting and numbers and big words, basically. Like that kind of thing is not the kind of thing that I do. I try to break things down into layman's terms as often as possible because that's the way that I understand it, right? So what I'm learning a lot about the space is that, you know, a lot of people do use those very jargon-based statements, right? There's a lot of buzzwords, there's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of difficult technical language. A lot of those people don't really have the, you know, background to be saying those things. A lot of the people who are giving information aren't giving the correct information. So what I would advise to is to do what I'm saying, which is play to your strengths, right? I know that I'm not the guy to give you the best technical information. I know that I'm not the guy to answer all the questions. What I can do is I can talk to you in a way that we both understand, and I can advise you to head in the right direction. But I'm always wary of the influencers who think that they know everything. Because the fact of the matter is not everybody knows everything, and not everybody, even if they do know it, has the language to explain it. And that's what's going to be super important. You can go look for all the answers from somebody who's doing technical analysis, but if they do not have the language or the capability to explain the thoughts that come out of their mind, then you're not going to be able to learn it. So it has as much to do with your learning potential as their potential to teach.
Well said. Good job. Good job. So I got a question for you, and that would be, in your travels, because I know you've been really active back when people used to be able to go places and get like face to face with other people. Remember those days back when people actually were face to face? You would go to conferences and things of that nature, and that's something I've never had the chance to do. Share with an old guy what it's like to go be in a space with hundreds, sometimes thousands of other people that are excited about the same thing you're excited about.
It's honestly just a blast. Like, it's just a really, really fun time. So like when I think about the conference scene, I think the first thing that I think about is like literally just hanging out, which is dumb and not really what it's supposed to provide. I mean, networking is everything.
Right.
When I went to conferences, I never really sit in and listen to the chats. Sorry guys who are giving like keynotes and stuff. But the reason for that being what I just explained, the lack of language and the jargon, basically. Like I have a lot of trouble sitting through 45 minutes of somebody explaining technical bullshit to me. Like I'm not supposed to curse. I don't know, technical. I can't sit through an hour of necessarily somebody doing that. So I hang out a lot. I do a lot of networking. I make a lot of friends and just spend time with them. And it is so much fun just being with like-minded individuals. I love that we're on this ground floor where everybody's still weird, you know, everybody's still like totally weird. And I get a lot of slack. I think because I, you know, a lot of my selfies and stuff make me look like I'm not weird, which is why, again, I do my normal AMAs where I'm a normal person, because I want people to know, like, hey, I'm not far removed from this community when it comes to our behaviors. So it's really, really fun getting together with like other crypto nerds, to be honest. I don't know how to put it better than that. Because I'm not really there for that deep technical token conversation that a lot of them do have in the conferences, but I'm there for a sense of community. You can feel so isolated interacting with cryptocurrency online, especially if you're a trader, especially if you're looking at charts all day, especially if like the majority of your social interactions in this community comes from Twitter. It's really fun to be in person with other human beings. And I think that when we move towards a digital age like that, it can be easy to forget, like sometimes things are just supposed to be fun.
Well, would you consider yourself somebody that's always been a social butterfly?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily. I don't know. Cryptocurrency has been a much different experience for me than other things in the past.
Oh, okay. Because I mean, how you present yourself now, currently, like right in this moment, there is, well, there's a level of confidence. And I think there's an, you know, with that comes either you've been always an extrovert and it's just, you know, part of who you are. You put yourself out there and the people that respond, you continue to engage with, and people that maybe give you pushback or don't respond, you're willing to move to other circles or what have you, to, you know, engage with people that want to engage with you. That may have not been the case, huh? This is a learned thing.
I mean, I suppose so. You know, for me, I mean, when you're talking about like interacting in social spaces like that, right? Like moving forward and continuing to maintain who you are. For me in the last 2 years, at least with CryptoFinally, it has been, I want to say the learning curve has been larger because the demand has been stronger. It's like just like cryptocurrency and charting, right? Their volume is there, so I'm experiencing higher volatility. So like people feel a lot of feelings, and it's more, it's not like one person leaves a comment, two people leave a comment. It's like thousands of people are leaving opinions and comments. And it just, you hit a certain point where you're like, you can't do anything about it, you know? There's no point in trying to control an outside narrative. You have to just keep on moving on your path. And, you know, a lot of influencers do things like try to get unnecessary attention. I am of the mind that if you believe in something and you continue to preach on what you believe in and believe that it will help other people, you do not need to manifest a campaign. The campaign will come to you. Right? So all these big moments of social buzz that I've gotten, moments where I've been divisive, moments where I didn't necessarily have a lot of people rooting for me, those were moments of things that I truly, truly believed in, and they are handed to me on a silver platter. And if you believe in it and you're passionate about it, you will be given opportunities to speak on the things that you're passionate about. So I think that I've been given a very quick rush into the way that people perceive me and the way that I should be moving through this space. So it wasn't like I had trickle in like, oh, 4 people didn't like me today, maybe I'll change it. Like 5 people liked this. It's like, no, 1,000 people hated this and 2,000 people loved it, and that's just where we stand. So I'm just gonna like keep moving through. But yeah, perception and response, reaction, audience engagement, all that stuff sort of plays into my ability to continue and my ability to sort of push it away, right? So I think if I received less, I'd probably be more reactive to it than the fact that I received so much. It always blows my mind when an influencer gets like one troll and they start tweeting about that troll, or they start, you know, that kind of thing. Like they can't handle the one troll. So I think that you build a thick skin and it eventually sort of manifests into your personality in the way that you're describing me of right now. I've built a very, very thick skin in this community. You know, there's nothing you can get me for. I'm not going to do anything on this like live stream in this moment. You're talking about like my confidence. I'm confident that at any given moment, I'm not going to do something more stupid than the other stupid things people have caught me doing, you know? So there's a bar for it. Once you've reached that, you're good.
Well, there was a term I was looking for earlier, and I just remember it's called unapologetic.
Okay.
You seem unapologetic about who you are, and I think that's great. I mean, I'm sure if you internalize, I fucked up, and it hurts somebody that you care about, or even that you maybe didn't care about, you probably got the wherewithal and the maturity to say, hey, I apologize. That was me. I fucked up. I'm sorry. However, all the other things that me is just being me, I'm not going to apologize for that. And I like that. I think more of us should do that. My generation kind of, you know, my parents were boomers. Their parents were silent generation. And it was kind of, you know, there was a lot of, you should be seen and not heard kind of thing, up until the point where at 18, for your 18th birthday, you get luggage and sent off to school or off into the workforce, or at least out of the house. Get out. You've got to go build your own life. There's a different kind of thing with the millennials. You know, I see it in my son. I see it in his friends. I see it in a lot of the younger folks that I see putting out content on YouTube and especially in Twitter. People are unabashed. You know what I mean? They just fuck it, fuck you, fuck this, fuck. I'm like, wow, okay, cool. It's a little different spin than I take, but I get it. I wanted to ask you this because it's always I'm curious to always hear these answers. I ask all my guests the same question as I'm looking at the clock, and we're getting close to the time that you had allocated for this. What would be the 3 qualities that you want to be remembered for long after you've passed? Now, you've lived an incredible, long, joyous digital lifestyle. What would be the 3 qualities you'd want people, when they talk about Rachel and finally CryptoFinally, what would those things be, and maybe a little bit about why?
Ooh, I think passion for what I believe in overall, right? So I think I'm fairly well known as being outspoken, especially when people don't agree with me, right? So passion for what I believe in overall. I want people to remember that I continue to voice things. The stuff that I'm passionate about, the stuff that I talk about, social issues, gender disparity, representation, putting, underrepresented and marginalized communities in places of power. I think that I'm going to be on the right side of this. And that's what I want them to remember, is that I'm as passionate about it despite the amount of pushback that I got in, because I still to this day, despite my believe that I am on the right side of these issues.
Well, we got passion for sure. You got that in spades.
For what I believe in. Diversifying the space. I want to be one of the key players who helps to diversify the space and help the understanding that anybody can be involved in cryptocurrency and blockchain, right? I want it to be known that anyone can be involved in cryptocurrency, and there isn't a model that you need to fit in order to be in this industry. I want to be part of the people who pave the way to put the underrepresented into positions of leadership, to get different faces in the leaders of our industry, because we have the opportunity at the ground floor to do that right now. We might not have this opportunity 10 years from now. The industry will be built by then. Right now, we really can do what we want with it because we haven't yet assimilated to a shitty 1% of financial sectors.
Interesting.
What else do I want?
Well, hey, let me ask you a question. So with diversification, would a way to classify that as a quality would be like you were inclusive? Would that be a proper, I don't want to put terms in your mouth, but I'm trying to frame it in as a quality, and I could see where that could literally mean you were inclusive.
Yeah, I mean, inclusivity, absolutely. But I want it, for me, that was more about representation. You know, this is an interesting take that a lot of people, I hope that they'll talk about it in the future. And I don't care if it sounds like my head is up my ass or my ego is too big. I have watched the space change, at least in the social spaces, since I have gotten involved with cryptocurrency. I have watched it change. I have watched these female characters, like women, come out of their shells. Women feel comfortable doing more speaking, women doing more collaborations. I've had companies reach out to me and tell me that I got them thinking about representation, that maybe we do need to access a larger demographic. I've been seeing just change overall, and I can't help but to think that it's possible that my message, which very often goes viral, be it for bad or good, could be helping this out. I mean, even recently in the Binance Awards, when I called on the gender disparity, the fact that I was the only woman nominated of 25 people globally for Best Influencer of the Year by Binance, I was the only person who called that gender disparity, and we actually got Binance to respond to an article in the press and say, hey, we weren't inclusive enough and we're going to do better. You don't get that by sitting down and shutting up. You don't get that when you say things that everybody already agrees with. So I think that there is power in changing that representation. So I think representation is really more what I would like to be remembered for. It's inclusive representation for sure, but that's the angle.
Now, how are you with virtual high fives? Because I'd like to give you a virtual high five on that. Excellent job. So Binance responded. See, I was aware of you being the only woman in that. They had a couple of categories, but you were in a what they called an influencer category.
No, they were all influencer categories. I was just in North America.
Oh, that's right. It was regional, and okay. And they responded, said, hey, we'll take a better look at this next time. We could have been more inclusive.
In a Cointelegraph article. That being said, 0 women won any of their awards. So it was me against 24, and then there was a Latin American award. And in the Latin American award, there were 2 women in the running, but it wasn't hosted by the main Binance channels. No women won anything.
No, so Binance don't they know women? Women they're the shit. Number one, like I told my best piece of advice I ever gave my son. I said, son, this is one of the hardest lessons I've learned, but I've learned it. Women are smarter. They can take more. They can take more pain. They're stronger on every single level, except for maybe you can lift furniture more easily than they can. And if you can accept that and understand that, your relationships with women will get much better going forward. And so like a month and a half ago, he goes, hey Dad, so I had this thing going on, da, 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 da. And he goes, I remembered what you told me and I shut up and I listened and things got better. I went, there you go. There you go. Your old man is looking out for you. No, but I believe it's true. You know, the interesting space when it comes to tech is that for a very long time, and this, my generation's responsible for this, I'll totally cop to it, is that we followed previous generations and kind of gender gapped, right? Boys would go off and do these things, right? And girls would go off and do these things. And kind of generally speaking, it was girls were kind of ushered into arts type of fields and guys into sciences, whether it be engineering or coding or whatever. And I think, you know, I see that changing, right? I see that changing and I'm totally hip to that. And I celebrate and support that. But you live it. So would you say that there is a shift, a real quantum shift from, let's say, my demographic to yours?
Yeah, and you know, I don't think it's necessarily a shift in will, but a shift sort of in what's happening in the world. You know, I would dare to say that there were women who are interested in sciences and technological fields like forever. It's the accessibility and the representation. You know, I'm much less likely to join a field where I don't see anybody who looks like me than I would be if I was represented in that community, right? And so that's part of what I do bring here in cryptocurrency as well, is just that level of representation. So I agree with you. I do think it's shifting. I think there are definitely more women getting involved in sciences and technical fields. But that's because there have been other women who have paved the way and other men who have taken their leadership role and allowed this kind of thing to happen and continue. You know, as long as we continue to give women respect and we continue to give them representation, growth will happen. And that's why representation is so important, and people forget that. You know, the conversation that men have so often is, if women wanted to do this, they would do this. If women wanted to get involved, they would get involved. Well, men, if you walked into a room and there were 500 women and no other men, would you stay? You know, that's the question. Would they stay? And so you can't just say if they wanted to do it, they would. We must put women in positions of power. We must represent the underrepresented if we truly want them to come and get a foothold in our community. And it's powerful to start at that level of representation. That's not necessarily, you know, just giving a woman a job because she's a woman, but if she deserves the job and another man, say, deserves the job, and this is where I get the flack, if they both deserve the job equally, represent someone who's underrepresented, right? If you feel that they
all things considered equal.
Yeah, if all things are considered equal, and you know what, that happens more often than not. And part of the reason as well that women don't get those jobs is because the men have been victim to the representation thing themselves, right? You know how like the majority of CEOs in the United States are above 6 feet tall? That's representation. That's what we view to be as powerful. Men are less likely to view a woman as powerful and capable than they are to view a man as powerful and capable. And that has to do with the lack of representation of women in power. So it all just stems back down to it. But yeah, I think things are changing, and I think that we're seeing it happen on multiple levels and layers right now.
Wow, that was great. What a great answer. I think we got one more quality to go.
Oh God, that I was just me. I want to be just me, and I want them to know that I was.
I don't believe that's going to be difficult.
Thank you.
Oh, Rachel, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I know you've been busy. Heck, I saw just this morning you did a live on Periscope, or at least that's where I saw it. Then you did a live stream with another enthusiast, popped onto this show. What do you got in store for the rest of the afternoon, just so I can kind of get an idea what a typical day is for
Well, you missed that I also posted a selfie. People are, it takes me like an hour in and out to get the selfies. I'm tired of people thinking it's easy work. And I'm going to distribute the content that I've created today across my 26 platforms.
Right on, right on.
Phone calls and interviews, but yeah, distribution.
Well, I'm going to leave you, I want to leave you with this, and that was, so in thinking about things that I wanted to talk to you about and interact with you today about, obviously, parody music videos came up because you've got a ton of them on your show. I mean, on your channel. So I'm not sure if you are familiar with, but when I was a kid, there was a group called the Jackson 5. I'm sure you're familiar with Michael Jackson, right? They did a song called ABC. ABC. As simple as 1, 2, 3. You remember? You got the jingle in your head a little bit.
I'm familiar with the Jackson 5. Yes.
Okay. Well, I thought, and I started thinking about it, even went as far as creating the first 2 verses of a tune called, instead of ABC, BTC. That's and I was thinking it would be, BTC as easy as 1, 2, 3. That would be like in the chorus. But I came up with the first 2 verses. I'd like to run them by you, and you can give me a quick critique. And I'll be brutally honest. Okay. You ready for this? Okay. BTC, how can I explain it? I'll take you frame by frame it. Have you all jump and shout, we're saying it.
Those the 2 lines? Well,
I consider those 2 verses. They're in 2 bars, right? Boom and boom. Musically, the way that
again?
You'd like to, from the top?
Yes.
BTC, how can I explain it? I'll take you frame by frame it. To have you all jump and shout and saying it.
I would change jump and shout to something more relevant about cryptocurrency.
And there it is, folks, where the 2 demographics diverge. Well, I want to thank you for representing young, energetic young women. I'm doing the very best I can to keep old, bald, and fat relevant in the media scene. Any last thoughts you'd like to share with the audience before we say goodbye?
I think you're wonderful. I think this was a great talk, and thank you for doing your part in being inclusive and all the things that we talked about today, striving for representation and raising a nice young man.
My son I'm his biggest fan, and I'm telling you, had he grown up like I did, it would have been a nightmare. I was a delinquent. I was kind of an F authority kind of guy.
The worst kids create very great adults. So that's where you stand now. Yeah.
Right on. You were a joy, Rachel. Folks, you're going to be, if somehow you lived under a rock and haven't come across Rachel on either YouTube or Twitter, her Twitter handle, her YouTube channel, all will be in the description of this particular video. And from wherever Rachel is in Costa Rica, until next time, everybody, Pura Vida.